Unit 10. Sense relations, identity and similarity of sense. In previous units, you were introduced to the notion of sense. We now proceed to the examination of sense relations. What we have referred to previously as the sense of an expression is the whole set of sense relations it contracts with other expressions in the language. We shall be mainly concerned with the sense relations which involve individual predicates and whole sentences. Synonymy. Synonymy is the relationship between two predicates that have the same sense. Example: in most dialects of English, stubborn and obstinate are synonyms. In many dialects, brigand and bandit are synonyms. In many dialects, mercury and quicksilver are synonyms. Synonymy is a relation between predicates and not between words. It has what forms. Recall that the word may have many different senses. Each distinct sense of a word of the kind we are dealing with is a predicate. When necessary, we distinguish between predicates by giving them subscript numbers. For example, hide 1 could be the intransitive verb, as in let's hide from mommy. Hide 2 could be the transitive verb, as in hide your sweeties under the pillow. Hide 3 could be the noun, as in we watch the birds from a height. Height 4 could be the noun, as in the height of an ox weighs 200 lbs. The first three senses here, the first three predicates, are clearly related to each other in meaning, whereas the fourth is unrelated. It is because of the ambiguity of most words that we have had to formulate practice questions about synonymy in terms of sentences. The sentence, "The thief tried to hide the evidence," for example, make it clear that one is dealing with the predicate hide 2. The transitive verb hide 2 is a synonym of conceal. The definition of synonymy as a relationship between the senses of words requires a clear separation of all the different senses of a word, even though some of the senses may be quite closely related, as with hide 1, hide 2, and hide 3 mentioned in previous slide. All the examples so far have been of synonymy between predicates realized grammatically by a word of the same part of speech. For example, between adjective and adjective, as with deep and profound. But the notion of synonymy can be extended to hold between words of different part of speech. For example, between the verb sleeping and the adjective asleep. Examples like these are not the kind usually given of synonymy, but they help to make the point that the sense of a word does not depend entirely on its part of speech. Grammar and meaning are separate though closely related aspects of language. Paraphrase: a sentence which expresses the same proposition as another sentence is a paraphrase of that sentence, assuming the same reference for any referring expressions involved. Paraphrase is to sentences on individual interpretations as synonymy is to predicates, though some semanticists talk loosely of synonymy in the case of sentences as well. Example: bachelor, 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 bachelors prefer red-haired girls is a paraphrase of girls with red hair are preferred by unmarried men. Hyponymy. Hyponymy is a sense relation between predicates or sometimes longer phrases such that the meaning of one predicate or phrase is included in the meaning of the other. Example: the meaning of red is included in the meaning of scarlet. Red is the superordinate term. Scarlet is a hyponym of red. Scarlet is a kind of red. Note that the superordinate term red is more general or inclusive in meaning than its hyponym scarlet, which is much more specific in the kind of color it describes. In other words, the predicate red describes a particular region in color space whose prototype or focal examples are fairly distinct from those of other colors, though we have seen that more peripheral members of the extension of red tend to fade into other colors. But the term also includes more specific kinds of red within this region of color space, some of which have their own predicates to describe the narrower sort of hue, including scarlet, crimson, etc. In general, sense relationships involving hyponymy are usually structured in this way, with the superordinate term more abstract, general, or schematic than its hyponyms. We define hyponymy in such a way that synonymy counts as a special case of hyponymy. For example, given to synonyms such as mercury and quicksilver, we say for convenience that these also illustrate the hyponymy relationship, and that mercury and quicksilver are hyponyms of each other. The synonymy can be seen as a special case of hyponymy. It has symmetrical hyponymy. Rule: if X is a hyponym of Y, and if Y is also a hyponym of X, then X and Y are synonymous. Entailment. Earlier in this PowerPoint, we saw that it is possible to extend the notion of sameness of meaning between predicates, synonymy, to sameness of meaning between propositions that are expressed by sentences, paraphrases. Similarly, the notion of hyponymy, which involves meaning inclusion between individual predicates, can be extended to a particular kind of meaning inclusion between propositions in a language involving truth conditions called entailment. A proposition X entails a proposition Y if the truth of Y follows necessarily from the truth of X. We extend this basic definition in terms of propositions to cover sentences in the following way. A sentence expressing proposition X entails a sentence expressing proposition Y if the truth of Y follows necessarily from the truth of X. Example: John ate all the keepers. X entails someone ate something. Y. John killed Bill. X entails Bill died. Y. It is not possible to think of any circumstances in which sentence X is true and sentence Y false. Entailment applies cumulatively. Thus, if X entails Y and Y entails Z, then X entails Z. Example: X, some boys ran down the street, entails Y, some kids ran down the street. Y, some kids ran down the street, entails Z, some kids went down the street. Therefore, X, some boys ran down the street, entails Z, some kids went down the street. Two sentences may be said to be paraphrases of each other if and only if they have exactly the same set of entailments, or which comes to the same thing. If and only if they mutually entail each other, so that whenever one is true, the other must also be true. Example: John and Mary are twins, entails Mary and John are twins. Mary and John are twins, entails John and Mary are twins. Therefore, John and Mary are twins is a paraphrase of Mary and John are twins. Summary: the relationship between entailment and paraphrase is parallel to the relationship between hyponymy and synonymy. Just as synonymy is symmetric, it has two-way hyponymy, paraphrase is symmetric, it has two-way entailment. Hyponymy and synonymy are sense relations between predicates. The latter is a special symmetric case of the former. Entailment and paraphrase are sense relations between sentences, the latter being a special symmetric case of the former. Okay, that's all from me. My name is Ahmad Asad. Thank you for watching.
Hello, I am Mathias Yudhi S, and I'm gonna tell you all about sense relation, oppositeness, and dissimilarity of sense and ambiguity. Now, let's start. Now, let's say the binary oppositeness. Binary oppositeness, the opposite of a certain word which is usually predictable. For example, is love and hate, small and big, dangerous and safe, and well, many other examples. Next, ambiguity. Ambiguity is where the certain word did not have any direct opposite, antonym, or similarity, synonym of other words, or did not have any similarity at all. Yeah, the example is trunk, well, from elephant trunk or maybe tree trunk. Coach, you know, like this says other thing. Ring, bus, and many others example. Next is the form of ambiguity. It has two forms. One is homonymy, is one of ambiguous words whose different senses are far apart from each other and not obviously related to each other in any way with respect to a native speaker intuition, like the earlier drunk and now we have mock and bang. Then polysemy is one where a word has several very closely related senses, and the example is mouth and run. Next, combination of binary antonym. Well, as you can see from the picture, man, woman, boy, girl, husband, wife, bachelor, and spinster. We see that combination of binary antonym produces more complicated four-way system of contrast, but that within such system the most natural way to pair up pairs of antonym is along the same dimension. For example is man versus woman along the male or female dimension, but not man versus girl, cutting across both dimensions. Next is the definition of binary antonym. If a predicate describes a relationship between two things or people and some other predicate describes the same relationship when the two things or people are mentioned in the opposite order, then the two predicates are converse of each other. Antonymy is a relationship between predicates and the corresponding relationship between sentences is contradictionary. Well, next antonym contradiction. The example is I found treasure, I found trash. The example shows us that maybe I not just found treasure, but I found trash too. Yes, the predicate found are pointing both the antonym written even though both of them are contradicting each other. Next is I love bird, I hate bird. This example shows us the contradiction of I, because I can love and hate bird at the same time, because love and hate are contradicting each other. Well, that's all. Thank you very much for listening to me. See you soon.
Hello everyone, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Fatin N and I will explain you about logic. Logic is a word that means many things to different people. Many everyday uses of the words logic and logical could be replaced by expressions such as reasonable behavior and reasonable. Logic deals with meanings in a language system, not with actual behavior of any sort. Logic deals most centrally with propositions. The terms logic and logical do not apply directly to utterances, which are instances of behavior. The use of logic. For example, the goal that I want to achieve is to alleviate my hunger. My assumption and knowledge is the hunger the hunger is alleviated by eating food, and bread is food. And then there is a loaf of bread in front of me. Then I am able to eat this loaf of bread. And because me are hungry, then hungry plus eating bread is goal fulfilled. Logic is the restriction of our behavior in doing some activity according to goal, assumptions, knowledge, and final action which is in our mind. And the rational is the action we do by executing the logic in our mind itself. Thank you everyone for watching this video. That's all from us. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.